Welcome to the Explainer. You know, we're surrounded by numbers every day, but what if they're more than just, well, numbers? Today, we're diving into a really cool framework that promises to turn raw data into these incredible, profound stories.
So let's just start with a simple question, but one you might not have really thought about before. Are numbers just for counting? I mean, what if they could actually tell stories? What if they could unlock hidden patterns and maybe even connect us to some deeper truths?
You know, for the longest time, there's been this giant gap. On one hand, you've got pure mathematics. It's rigid, it's rigorous, it's all about precision, but it kind of misses the symbolic side of things. And on the other hand, you have traditional numerology, which is packed with symbolism, but let's be honest, it often lacks a solid, verifiable structure.
So, in this explainer, we're going to try to bridge that divide. We'll start with this idea of numbers having hidden meanings, then we'll get into the TNK framework itself. After that, we'll look at its toolkit, see it in action with a really interesting Quranic case study, and finally, we'll talk about how this moves from code to pure creativity.
All right, first up, numbers with hidden meanings. Let's get into bridging that gap between logic and symbolism.
So here's the core problem, right? How do you create a system that's both rock solid and, well, flexible? How can you blend that mathematical rigor with interpretive creativity to actually pull deeper meaning out of data?
And this is exactly where a new idea comes in. It's called the Creative Numerical Transformation Framework, or TNK for short. Okay, so let's be super clear about this. The TNK framework isn't just another flavor of numerology. It's really designed as a kind of hybrid model. Think of it like a conceptual blueprint, a structured way to go looking for symbolism inside numerical data. And what's really cool is that this framework isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's actually built on some pretty established fields. It borrows from ancient traditions like gematria and abjad numerals, where letters have number values. It uses real math concepts like modular arithmetic to simplify complex numbers down to their core patterns. And then it uses symbolic semiotics, which is a fancy way of saying it interprets those patterns, kind of like how we find meaning in archetypes in stories or myths.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does it actually work? Let's take a look at the toolkit for transformation. This is where we get our hands dirty and turn numbers into a real narrative.
So, the framework has these 5 core tools. You can stick numbers together, that's concatenation, or break them apart. You can use your basic math, like adding or multiplying, but you can also use what it calls special functions, which are tied to symbolic numbers. And finally, you can boil everything down to a single digit. But here's the real kicker. You don't just use one tool. The magic happens when you chain them together. The output of one step becomes the input for the next, creating this whole path of transformation.
All right, this is where it gets really cool. Theory is great, but let's see the TNK framework in action. We're going to walk through a case study on Quranic codes from the source material.
The whole thing follows a pretty clear 5-step methodology. You initiate with a seed number, you run it through a transformation chain, you reduce it to its core value, you interpret that, and then you validate the whole process. It's a really methodical, cyclical approach.
Okay, step 1, initiation. It all starts with a seed number. In this case, the source material comes up with the number 76923, and this number isn't random. It's derived from a deep, multi-layered conceptual analysis of the Quran. So that's our starting point.
Then we move to step 2, transformation. Here we're going to apply one of those special functions we talked about. We take our seed number and multiply it by 13. My 13? Well, in this particular analysis, it's chosen specifically for its power to amplify the spiritual meaning.
And that one simple multiplication gives us this: 999,999. Whoa! That 6-fold repetition of the number 9 is seen as a symbol of ultimate completion. But we're not done yet. Now we have to distill this big number down to its true essence.
And that brings us to step 3, reduction. We're going to use that digit summation tool. So we add them up. 9 plus 9 plus 9, you get the idea. It all adds up to 54. But we're not at a single digit yet, so we do it again. 5 plus 4 gives us
9. And there it is. Think about that. We started with 76,923, blew it up to almost a million, and then boiled it all back down to one single essential digit, the number 9.
So what does it all mean? This is step 4, interpretation, and it's absolutely crucial. The number 9, in this specific context, is mapped to the profound concept of insan tobat, which translates to the repentant human.
So the whole mathematical journey, every single step, was a structured way to arrive at this one powerful piece of wisdom. Okay, so that's one really specific case study. But what about the bigger picture? Let's zoom out from the code and look at the creativity and the wider applications here.
Yeah, this framework isn't just for looking at spiritual texts. The potential here is huge. Think about education. You could gamify math, making it about finding stories instead of just finding X. Or in philosophy, you could explore archetypes. Even in tech, you could use it to help AI spot patterns we humans might miss. The possibilities are pretty wild.
At the end of the day, what the TNK framework really does is reimagine what numbers are. They're not just static, boring values on a page. No, they're dynamic. They're alive with potential. They're basically little bundles of narrative waiting to be unpacked.
The source material puts it perfectly, I think. It's about reimagining numbers as portals to creativity and divinity. It's a pretty powerful way to look at it, right?
And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. If this kind of creative process can pull such a profound story out of just one number, what other hidden narratives are just sitting there, waiting in all the numbers that surround us every single day?